Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where there's an ocean of mercy flowing from these transcendental literatures, and Srila Prabhupada is present with us personally. He was once asked by a reporter in San Francisco, "What will happen when you die?" Prabhupada immediately said, "I'm not going to die. I'm going to live forever in my books." So that may sound far-fetched, heavy, whatever, but it's actually true. And anyone who actually absorbs their hearts and minds in the sound, especially, of these transcendental literatures, becomes purified, whether they like it or not. I mean, most of us want to. We like it. That's why we're here. But even if we don't like it, we get purified. Just like if you're around a fire, you get warm, whether you know it or whether you like it or not. Or you take a medicine, and whether you understand it or not, it makes you well if it's proper medicine. So this is the medicine for the conditioned state of material existence, which has covered our spiritual identity and nature and caused us to become, immersed in a forest fire. Material existence is like a forest fire, and you can't put out a forest fire just by your garden hose. It takes the rains coming from clouds, and that comes from God. So the rain of mercy coming from Krishna through the Srimad-Bhagavatam can put out the fire of material existence in the heart and give one a desire to become free from this material world. Okay, Hare Krishna, welcome aboard. We've got a room full of spiritual seekers, sincere personalities who are ready for the truth. Here it comes. As we used to say when we were kids, ready or not, here we come. It's hide and seek. We've been hiding, and now we're going to seek. This is the Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram, a prayer glorifying the Srimad-Bhagavatam by a liberated personality named Srila Sanatana Goswami, the senior disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, who lived on this earth 500 years ago and taught this Srimad-Bhagavatam as it is. And Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual master, translated for the first time in the history of the world in the English language from the point of view of pure devotional service. So these are Sanatana Goswami's words. Sarva Shastrabdipi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidwandodita Ditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Mad Mahadana Man Nistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. asadu sadutadayin atini chochatakara hanamun chagadachin mam premna rit kandayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay. We're hearing about the glories of Bharata Maharaj, the king of the earth, who was the son of Maharaj Rishabhadev, an incarnation of Krishna who appeared here on the earth a very, very long time ago. And Maharaj Bharata, after he successfully ruled the earth and had sons to take charge, after he left, he went into the forest to perform pure devotional service in severe austerity. And we're hearing about his exploits, because while there, he got attached to a deer. Text 30, chapter 8, text 5. The Canto 5. Although Bharata Maharaj received the body of a deer, by constant repentance, he became completely detached from all material things. He did not disclose these things to anyone, but left his mother deer in a place known as Kalanjara mountain, where he was born. He again went to the forest of Shalagram and to the ashram of Pulastya and Pulaha. Purport. It is significant that Maharaj Bharata, by the grace of Vasudeva, remembered his past life. He did not waste a moment. He returned to Pulaha ashram, to the village known as Shalagram. Association is very meaningful. Therefore, ISKCON tries to perfect one who enters the society. The members of this society should always remember that the society is not like a free hotel. All the members should be very careful to execute their spiritual duties, so that whoever comes will automatically become a devotee and will be able to return back to Godhead in this very life. Although Bharata Maharaj acquired the body of a deer, he again left his hearth and home, in this case the mountain Kalanjara. No one should be captivated by his birthplace and family. One should take shelter of the association of devotees and cultivate Krishna consciousness. Text 31. Remaining in that ashram, the great king Bharata Maharaj was now very careful not to fall victim to bad association. Without disclosing his past to anyone, he remained in that ashram and ate dry leaves only. He was not exactly alone, for he had the association of the Supersoul. In this way, he waited for death in the body of a deer. Bathing in that holy place, he finally gave up that body. Purport. Holy places like Vrindavan, Hardwar, Prayag, and Jagannath Puri are especially meant for the execution of devotional service. Vrindavan specifically is the most exalted and preferred holy place for Vaishnava devotees of Lord Krishna who are aspiring to return back to Godhead, the Vaikuntha planets. There are many devotees in Vrindavan who regularly bathe in the Jamuna and thus cleanses. There are many devotees in Vrindavan who regularly bathe in the devotee, and this cleanses all the contamination of the material world. By constantly chanting and hearing the holy names and pastimes of the Supreme Lord, one certainly becomes purified and becomes a fit candidate for liberation. However, if one purposefully falls victim to sense gratification, he has to be punished, at least for one lifetime, like Bharata Maharaj. Thus, and the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 8th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled A Description of the Character of Bharata Maharaj. One more act in the drama. Chapter 9. The Supreme Character of Jad Bharat. In this chapter, summary, in this chapter, Bharata Maharaj's attainment of the body of a Brahmana is described. In this body he remained like one dull, deaf, and dumb, so much so that when he was brought before the goddess Kali to be killed as a sacrifice, he never protested but remained silent. After having given up the body of a deer, he took birth in the womb of the youngest wife of a Brahmana. In this life, he could also remember the activities of his past life, and in order to avoid the influence of society, he remained like a deaf and dumb person. He was very careful not to fall down again. He did not mix with anyone who was not a devotee. This process should be adopted by every devotee. As advised by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Asat Sangha Tyag, a Vaishnava Achar. One should strictly avoid the company of non-devotees, even though they may be family members. When Bharata Maharaj was in the body of a Brahmana, the people in the neighborhood thought of him as a crazy, dull fellow. But within, he was always chanting and remembering Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although his father wanted to give him an education and purify him as a Brahmana by offering him the sacred thread, he remained in such a way that his father and mother could understand that he was crazy and not interested in the reformatory method. Nonetheless, he remained fully Krishna conscious, even without undergoing such official ceremonies. Due to his silence, some people who were no better than animals began to tease him in many ways, but he tolerated this. After the death of his father and mother, his stepmother and stepbrothers began to treat him very poorly. They would give him the most condemned food, but still he did not mind. He remained completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. He was ordered by his stepbrothers and mother to guard a paddy field one night, and at that time the leader of a dacoit party took him away and tried to kill him by offering him as a sacrifice before Bhadrakali. When the dacoits brought Bharata Maharaj before the goddess Kali and raised a chopper to kill him, the goddess Kali became immediately alarmed due to the mistreatment of a devotee. She came out of the deity and, taking the chopper in her own hands, killed all the dacoits there. Thus a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can remain silent despite the mistreatment of non-devotees. Rogues and dacoits who misbehave toward a devotee are punished at last by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 1 and 2. Srila Shukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, after giving up the body of a deer, Bharata Maharaj took birth in a very pure Brahmana family. There was a Brahmana who belonged to the dynasty of Angira. He was fully qualified with Brahminical qualifications. He could control his mind and senses, and he had studied the Vedic literatures and other subsidiary literatures. He was expert in giving charity, and he was always satisfied, tolerant, very gentle, learned, and non-envious. He was self-realized and engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He remained always in a trance. He had 9 equally qualified sons by his first wife, and by his second wife he begot twins, a brother and a sister, of which the male child was said to be the topmost devotee and foremost of saintly kings, Bharata Maharaj. This then is the story of the birth he took after giving up the body of a deer. Purport. Bharata Maharaj was a great devotee, but he did not attain success in one life. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that a devotee who does not fulfill his devotional duties in one life is given the chance to be born in a fully qualified Brahmana family or a rich Kshatriya or Vaishya family. Suchinam Shrimatam Gehe. Bharat Maharaj was the firstborn son of Maharaj Rishabha in a rich Kshatriya family, but due to his willful negligence of his spiritual duties and his excessive attachment to an insignificant deer, he was obliged to take birth as the son of a deer. However, due to his strong position as a devotee, he was gifted with the remembrance of his past life. Being repentant, he remained in a solitary forest and always thought of Krishna. Then he was given the chance to take birth in a very good Brahmana family. Text 3. Due to his being especially gifted with the Lord's mercy, Bharat Maharaj could remember the incidents of his past life. Although he received the body of a Brahmana, he was still very much afraid of his relatives and friends who were not devotees. He was always very cautious of such association because he feared that he would again fall down. Consequently, he manifested himself before the public eye as a madman, dull, blind, and deaf, so that others would not try to talk to him. In this way, he saved himself from bad association. Within, he was always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord and chanting the Lord's glories, which save one from the bondage of fruitive action. In this way, he saved himself from the onslaught of non-devotee associates. Purport. Every living entity is bound by different activities due to association with the modes of nature. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Karanam Gunasangosya Sarasad Yonijan Masu. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among of various species. Bhagavad Gita 13:22. We get different types of bodies among 8,400,000 species according to our karma. Karmana, Daiva, Netrena. We work under the influence of material nature contaminated by the three modes, and thus we get a certain type of body according to superior order. This is called karma bandha. To get out of this karma bandha, one must engage himself in devotional service. Then one will not be affected by the modes of material nature. Mam Pyoyo Vyabhicharina Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sagunan Samati Chaitan Brahmabhuyaya Kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Bhagavad Gita 14:26. To remain immune from the material qualities, one must engage himself in devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. That is the perfection of life. When Maharaj Bharat took birth as a Brahmana, he was not very interested in the duties of a Brahmana, but within he remained a pure Vaishnava, always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord. As advised in Bhagavad Gita, Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto Majjaji Mam Namaskuru. This is the only process by which one can be saved from the danger of repeated birth and death. Text 4. The Brahmana father's mind was always filled with affection for his son, Jad Bharat Maharaj. Therefore he was always attached to Jad Bharat. Because Jad Bharat was unfit to enter the Grihastha ashram, he simply executed the purificatory process up to the end of the Brahmacharya ashram. Although Jad Bharat was unwilling to accept his father's instructions, the Brahmana nonetheless instructed him in how to keep clean and how to wash, thinking that the son should be taught by the father. Purport. Jad Bharat and Bharat Maharaj in the body of a Brahmana. Jad Bharat was Bharat Maharaj in the body of a Brahmana, and he outwardly conducted himself as if he were dull, deaf, dumb, and blind. Actually, he was quite alert within. He knew perfectly well of the results of fruitive activity and the results of devotional service. In the body of a Brahmana, Maharaj Bharat was completely absorbed in devotional service within. Therefore, it was not at all necessary for him to execute the regulated principles of fruitive activity. As confirmed in Srimad-Bhagavatam, Swanustatasya dharmasya sangsitir haritoshanam. Bhagavatam 1.2.13. One has to satisfy Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the perfection of the regulated principles of fruitive activity. Besides that, it is stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam, Dharma sanustitak pumsam vishwaksena katasuyaha notpadiyat yariratim shrama eva hi kevalam. Duties, dharma, executed by men, regardless of occupation, are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the Supreme Lord. Bhagavatam 1.2.8. These karma kanda activities are required as long as one has not developed Krishna consciousness. If one is developed in Krishna consciousness, there is no need to execute the prior regulated principles of karma kanda. Srila Madhavendra Puri said, "O regulated principles of karma kanda, please excuse me. I cannot follow all these regulated principles, for I am fully engaged in devotional service." He expressed the desire to sit somewhere beneath a tree and continue chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Consequently, he did not execute all the regulated principles. Similarly, Haridas Thakur was born in a Mohammedan family. From the very beginning of his life, he was never trained in the Karmakanda system, but because he was always chanting the holy name of the Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted him as Namacharya, the authority in chanting the holy name. As Jad Bharat, Bharat Maharaj was always engaged in devotional service within his mind. Since he had executed the regular principles continuously for 3 lives, he was not interested in continuing to execute them, although his Brahmana father wanted him to do so. Text 5. Jad Bharat behaved before his father like a fool, despite his father's adequately instructing him in Vedic knowledge. He behaved in that way so that his father would know that he was unfit for instruction and would abandon the attempt to instruct him further. He would behave in a completely opposite way. Although instructed to wash his hands after evacuating, he would wash them before. Nonetheless, his father wanted to give him Vedic instructions during the spring and summer. He tried to teach him the Gayatri Mantra along with Omkara and Vyahriti, but after 4 months his father still was not successful in instructing him. Text 6. The Brahmana father of Jad Bharat considered his son his heart and soul, and therefore he was very much attached to him. He thought it wise to educate his son properly, and being absorbed in this unsuccessful endeavor, he tried to teach his son the rules and regulations of brahmacharya, including the execution of the Vedic vows, cleanliness, study of the Vedas, the regulated methods, service to the spiritual master, and the method of offering a fire sacrifice. He tried his best to teach his son in this way, but all his endeavors failed. In his heart, he hoped that his son would be a learned scholar, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. Like everyone, this Brahmana was attached to his home, and he had forgotten that someday he would die. Death, however, was not forgetful. At the proper time, death appeared and took him away. Purport. Those too attached to family life, who forget that death comes in the future to take them away, become attached and unable to finish their duty as human beings. The duty of human life is to solve all the problems of life, but instead, people remain attached to family affairs and duties. Although they forget death, death will not forget them. Suddenly they will be kicked off the platform of peaceful family life. One may forget that he has to die, but death never forgets. Death comes always at the right time. The Brahmana father of Jad Bharat wanted to teach his son the process of brahmacharya, but he was unsuccessful due to his son's unwillingness to undergo the process of Vedic advancement. Jad Bharat was simply concerned with returning home, back to Godhead, by executing devotional service through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. He did not care for the Vedic instructions of his father. When one is fully interested in the service of the Lord, he does not need to follow all the regulated principles enunciated in the Vedas. Of course, for an ordinary man, the Vedic principles are imperative. No one can avoid them. But when one has attained the perfection of devotional service, it is not very important to follow the Vedic principles. Lord Krishna advised Arjuna to ascend to the platform of Nishtraigunya, the transcendental position above the Vedic principles. Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishtraigunya Bhavarjana, Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvasto, Niryoga Chema Atmavan. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Bhagavad Gita 2:45. Text 7. Thereafter, the Brahmana's younger wife, after entrusting her twin children, the boy and girl, to the elder wife, departed for Patiloka, voluntarily dying with her husband. Text 8. After the father died, the 9 step-brothers of Jad Bharat, who considered Jad Bharat dull and brainless, abandoned the father's attempt to give Jad Bharat a complete education. The step-brothers of Jad Bharat were learned in the 3 Vedas, the Rig Veda, Samaveda, and Yajur Veda, which very much encourage fruitive activity. The 9 brothers were not at all spiritually enlightened in devotional service to the Lord. Consequently, they could not understand the highly exalted position of Jad Bharat. Text 9 and 10. Degraded men are actually no better than animals. The only difference is that animals have 4 legs and such men have only 2. The 2-legged, animalistic man used to call Jad Bharat mad, dull, deaf, and dumb. They mistreated him, and Jad Bharat behaved for them like a madman who was deaf, blind, or dull. He did not protest or try to convince them that he was not so. If others wanted him to do something, he acted according to their desires. Whatever food he could acquire by begging or by wages, and whatever came of its own accord, be it a small quantity, palatable, stale, or tasteless, he would accept and eat. He never ate anything for sense gratification, because he was already liberated from the bodily conception, which induces one to accept palatable or unpalatable food. He was full in the transcendental consciousness of devotional service, and therefore he was unaffected by the dualities arising from bodily conception. Actually, his body was as strong as a bull's, and his limbs were very muscular. He didn't care for winter or summer, wind or rain, and he never covered his body at any time. He lay on the ground and never smeared oil on his body or took a bath. Because his body was dirty, his spiritual effulgence and knowledge were covered, just as the splendor of a valuable gem is covered by dirt. He only wore a dirty loincloth and a sacred thread, which was blackish. Understanding that he was born in a Brahmana family, people would call him a Brahmabandhu and other names. Being thus insulted and neglected by materialistic people, he wandered here and there. Purport. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Deha smriti nahi yar, sansara bandhana kahantar. One who has no desire to maintain the body or who is not anxious to keep the body in order and who is satisfied in any condition must be either mad or liberated. Either a pig or a Paramahansa. Text 11. Where am I? Yeah. Jad Bharat used to work only for food. His stepbrothers took advantage of this and engaged him in agricultural field work in exchange for some food, but actually he did not know how to work very well in the field. He did not know where to spread dirt or where to make the ground level or uneven. His brothers used to give him broken rice, oil cakes, and chaff of rice, worm-eaten grains, and burned grains that had stuck to the pot. But he gladly accepted all this as if it were nectar. He did not hold any grudges and ate all this very gladly. Hare Krishna. Purport. The platform of Paramahansa is described in Bhagavad Gita 2.15. Samadukha sukham dhiram somitat maya kalpate. When one is callous to all duality, the happiness and distress of this material world, one is fit for Amritava, eternal life. Bharat Maharaj was determined to finish his business in this material world, and he did not at all care for the world of duality. He was complete in Krishna consciousness and was oblivious to good and evil, happiness and distress. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Dvaite Bhadra Bhadra Jnana Sabha Manudharma E Bala E Manda Sabha Brahma. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. One has to understand that in the material world of duality, to think that this is good or that is bad is simply a mental concoction. However, one should not imitate this consciousness. One should actually be situated on the spiritual platform of neutrality. Text 12. At this time, being desirous of obtaining a son, a leader of dacoits who came from a Shudra family wanted to worship the goddess Bhadrakali by offering her in sacrifice a dull man who was considered no better than an animal. Purport. Low-class men such as Shudras worship demigods like goddess Kali or Bhadrakali for the fulfillment of material desires. To this end, they sometimes kill a human being before the deity. They generally chose a person who was not very intelligent, in other words, an animal in the shape of a man. No one should think that this is a Vedic principle. This is all complete concoction by lower class men. The leader of the dacoits captured a man-animal for sacrifice, but he escaped, and the leader ordered his followers to find him. They ran in different directions but could not find him. Wandering here and there in the middle of the night, covered by dense darkness, they came to a paddy field where they saw the exalted son of the Angira family, Jad Bharat, who was sitting in an elevated place, guarding the fields against attacks of deer and wild pigs. Text 14. The followers and servants of the dacoit chief considered Jad Bharat to possess qualities quite suitable for a man-animal, and they decided that he was a perfect choice for sacrifice. Their faces bright with happiness, they bound him with ropes and brought him to the temple of goddess Kali. Purport. In some parts of India, animalistic men are still sacrificed before the goddess Kali. However, such a sacrifice is only performed by Shudras and dacoits. Their business is to plunder the wealthy, and to become successful, they offer an animalistic man before the goddess Kali. It should be noted that they never sacrifice an intelligent man before the goddess. In the body of a Brahmana, Bharata Maharaja appeared deaf and dumb, yet he was the most intelligent man in the world. Nonetheless, being completely surrendered under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he remained in that condition and did not protest being brought before the deity for slaughter. As we have learned from the previous verse, he was very strong and could have easily avoided being bound with ropes, but he did not do anything. He simply depended on the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his protection. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes surrender under the Supreme Lord in this way: Marabi Rakabi Yo Ichya Tohara Nityadasa Prati Tuya Adhikara. My Lord, I am now surrendered unto you. I am your eternal servant. And if you like, you can kill me, or if you like, you can protect me. In any case, I am fully surrendered unto you. Text 15. After this, all the thieves, according to their imaginative ritual for killing animalistic men, bathed Jad Bharat, dressed him in new clothes, decorated him with the ornaments befitting an animal, smeared his body with scented oils, and decorated him with tilak, sandalwood pulp, and garlands. They fed him sumptuously, and then brought him before the goddess Kali, offering her incense, lamps, garlands, parched grain, newly grown twigs, sprouts, fruits, and flowers. In this way they worshipped the deity before killing the man-animal, and they vibrated songs and prayers and played drums and bugles. Jad Bharat was then made to sit down before the deity. Purport. It's exciting, huh? Exciting, huh? Huh? In this verse, the word swabhidina, according to their own ritualistic principles, is very significant. According to the Vedic Shastras, everything must be done according to regulated principles, but here it is stated that the thieves and rogues devised their own process for killing an animalistic man. The Tamasic Shastras give instructions for the sacrifice of an animal like a goat or buffalo before the goddess Kali, but there is no mention of killing a man, however dull he may be. This process was manufactured by the dacoits themselves. Therefore, the word swadhina is used. Even at this time, there are many sacrifices being conducted without reference to the Vedic scriptures. For instance, in Calcutta, recently a slaughterhouse was being advertised as a temple of the goddess Kali. Meat eaters foolishly purchase meat from such shops, thinking it different from ordinary meat and taking it to be the prasad of goddess Kali. The sacrifice of a goat or similar animal before the goddess Kali is mentioned in Shastras just to keep people from eating slaughterhouse meat and becoming responsible for the killing of animals. The conditioned soul has a natural tendency towards sex and meat eating. Consequently, the Shastras grant them some concessions. Actually, the Shastras aim at putting an end to these abominable activities, but they impart some regulative principles so that gradually meat eaters and sex hunters will be rectified. Text 16. At this time, one of the thieves, acting as the chief priest, was ready to offer the blood of Jad Bharat, whom they imagined to be an animal man, to the goddess Kali to drink as liquor. He therefore took up a very fearsome sword which was very sharp, and consecrating it by the mantra of Bhadrakali, raised it to kill Jad Bharat. Text 17. All the rogues and thieves who had made arrangements for the worship of Goddess Kali were low-minded and bound to the emotive passion and ignorance. They were overpowered by the desire to become very rich. Therefore they had the audacity to obey the injunctions of the Vedas, so much so that they were prepared to kill Jad Bharat, a self-realized soul born in a Brahmana family. Due to their envy, these dacoits brought him before the goddess Kali for sacrifice. Such people are always addicted to envious activities, and therefore they dared to try to kill Jad Bharat. Jad Bharat was the best friend of all living entities. He was no one's enemy, and he was always absorbed in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was born of a good Brahmana family, a father, and killing him was forbidden, even though they might have been an enemy or aggressive person, even though he might have been an enemy or an aggressive person. In any case, there was no reason to kill Jad Bharat, and the goddess Kali could not bear this. She could immediately understand that these sinful dacoits were about to kill a great devotee of the Lord. Suddenly, the deity's body burst asunder, and the goddess Kali personally emerged from it in a body burning with an intense, intolerable effulgence. Oops. Oops. According to the Vedic injunctions, only an aggressor can be killed. If a person comes with an intent to kill, one can immediately take action and kill in self-defense. It is also stated that one can be killed if he comes to set fire to the home or pollute or kidnap one's wife. Lord Ramachandra killed the entire family of Ravana because Ravana kidnapped his wife, Sita Devi. However, killing is not sanctioned in the Shastras for other purposes. The killing of animals in sacrifice to the demigods, who are expansions of the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead, is sanctioned for those who eat meat. This is a kind of restriction for meat eating. In other words, the slaughter of animals is also restricted by certain rules and regulations in the Vedas. Considering these points, there was no reason to kill Jad Bharat, who was born in a respectable, highly exalted Brahmana family. He was a God-realized soul and a well-wisher to all living entities. The Vedas did not at all sanction the killing of Jad Bharat by rogues and thieves. Consequently, the goddess Bhadrakali emerged from the deity to give protection to the Lord's devotee. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that due to the Brahman effulgence of such a devotee as Jad Bharat, the deity was fractured. Only thieves and rogues in the mode of passion and ignorance and maddened by material opulence offer a man in sacrifice before the goddess Kali. This is not sanctioned by the Vedic instructions. Presently, there are many hundreds and thousands of slaughterhouses throughout the world that are maintained by a puffed-up population mad for material opulence. Such activities are never supported by the Bhagavad school. Text 18. Intolerant of the offenses committed, the infuriated goddess Kali flashed her eyes and displayed her fierce curved teeth. Her reddish eyes glowed, and she displayed her fearsome features. She assumed a frightening body, as if she were prepared to destroy the entire creation. Leaping violently from the altar, she immediately decapitated all the rogues and thieves with the very sword which they had intended to kill Jad Bharat. What goes around comes around. She then began to drink the hot blood that flowed from the necks of the beheaded rogues and thieves, as if this blood were liquor. Indeed, she drank this intoxicant with her associates, who were witches and female demons. Becoming intoxicated with this blood, they all began to sing very loudly and dance as though prepared to annihilate the entire universe. At the same time, they began to play with the heads of the rogues and thieves, tossing them about as if they were balls. Oh, this would make a good blockbuster. Okay, purport. We can make a video game out of it, you know. It is evident from this verse that the devotees of Goddess Kali are not at all favored by her. It is Goddess Kali's work to kill and punish the demons. Goddess Kali Durga engages in decapitating many demons, dacoits, and other unwanted elements in society. Neglecting Krishna consciousness, foolish people try to satisfy the goddess by offering her many abominable things. But ultimately, when there is a little discrepancy in this worship, the goddess punishes the worshipper by taking his life. Demoniac people worship Goddess Kali to obtain some material benefit, but they are not excused of the sins performed in the name of worship. To sacrifice a man or animal before the deity is specifically forbidden. I have a friend in Jaipur. There's a temple of Goddess Kali. I don't remember her name. And it's Amber Fort. It was one of the original temples around Jaipur. And there's a very famous old deity there. And the big guys go there for the Navaratri, which means there's 9 days which, you know, the Hindus go and worship the goddess Kali with different offerings. So this friend of mine was a big guy. So he took me in his car and he went, you know, up the top of this hill, and we got in the back way, special privilege, you know, we got into the special parking lot and got led into this hallway, and then we went into this very small temple room, not much bigger than this room, maybe twice as big as this room, and it was all marble carved. It was very opulent, very nice, and there was an altar and a beautiful deity of Goddess Kali, and there were all the businessmen, the big guys in front, and they had their Jack Daniels lined up, and the priest would come out with a silver goblet, and they would pour the Jack Daniels into the silver goblet, and then they would give it to the priest, and the priest would go over and very reverentially, you know, with some ritual, and then they would bring the thing back out and pour it, and he'd very carefully pour it back into the bottle for his prasad. Now, this is going on in India. Try to understand. This is why Prabhupada taught us that we're not Hindus. Because this is what the Hindus do, or some of them, not all of them, but there are people who still do rituals and do all sorts of crazy things in the name of so-called religion and Vedic rituals. I thought of it when I was reading this, because these guys were even worse than them, of course. But still, this is what the mode of ignorance does. The mode of ignorance causes people to manufacture their own way of worship. You know, it's natural to worship, but they manufacture their own way of worship just for their own sense gratification. It has nothing to do with, here, have a little Jack Daniels, Kali. Maybe you'll like this. She has nothing to do with Jack Daniels. She can't stand this stuff. You know? Okay. When in text 20, when an envious person commits an offense before a great personality, he is always punished in the way mentioned above. Text 20. Shukadeva Goswami then said to Maharaj Parikshit, O Vishnu Datta, those who already know that the soul is separate from the body, who are liberated from the invincible knot in the heart, who are always engaged in welfare activities for all living entities, who never contemplate harming anyone, are always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who carries his disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, and acts as supreme time to kill the demons and protect his devotees. The devotees always take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, at all times, even if threatened by decapitation, they remain unagitated. For them, this is not at all wonderful. Purport. These are some of the great qualities of a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. First, a devotee is convinced of his spiritual identity. He never identifies with the body. He is firmly convinced that the spirit soul is different from the body. Consequently, he fears nothing. even though his life may be threatened, he is not at all afraid. He does not even treat an enemy like an enemy. Such are the qualifications of devotees. Devotees are always fully dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Lord is always eager to give them all protection in all circumstances. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 9th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Supreme Character of Jad Bharat. So there's millions of lessons in every one of these chapters, in every one of these purports, for us to take into our hearts and change our desires and learn how to think and feel and will, so that we can actually solve the problems of life rather than try to solve them by some material arrangements, which always ends up in more problems than they start. Okay, so now we've come to our open mic time. Anything that's stuck out in your minds that you want to contemplate on or reflect on or discuss in more depth or inquire about, please feel free. The time is yours. Yes, Pranit, I saw his first. I saw his hand.
Thank you.
And then Carter. Carter's after Pranita.
At the end of the chapter, we heard about when Goddess Kali came out and severely punished the dacoits. And then the next verse said, when an envious person commits an offense before a great personality, he is always punished in the way mentioned above. Is that literally?
No, not that everybody who does an offense gets his head cut off. No, they get what means in the method by law. It means according to the will of Krishna, first of all, but according to the degree of offense, the degree of seriousness of the offense. But people who are contrary by nature and are always going around, and in England they call them football hooligans. In America we call them something else. In some other place they call them something else. But they're all over the world now, and they're going more. They're getting more and more. The protesters who go out with weapons in order to fight and kill and maim others who they don't agree with, etc., etc., etc. And then, yes, they're all punished according to the degree of their offense in different ways. And now, because the group offenses are so serious on the earth right now, the Lord is punishing us by withdrawing the resources of material nature. The earth can provide unlimitedly for an unlimited numbers of people, but the earth withdraws those resources according to the misbehavior of the human beings in particular. So that's what it means. It means in retribution to the degree of the offense and the time and circumstance and what's called for. Everyone who does offense to others, they get their retribution. There's a very nice. Could you hand me that Gita? You don't have to do this. Sometimes you may wonder. Sometimes what persons who appear to be devotees, even us, we do things that are not perfect. We make mistakes in so many things. And Krishna, he has a very interesting thing to say about that. To put this into proper perspective, what we just heard. Krishna says, Apichet sududachado Bhajate mam ananyabhak sadhu eva samantavyak samyak vyavasito hisaha. This is Bhagavad Gita. Krishna speaking. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Purport. The word sudurachara used in this verse is very significant, and we should understand it properly. When a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional, and the other is constitutional. As for protecting the body, or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees, in connection with the conditioned life, and such activities are called conditional. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness or the devotional service of the Lord has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is cautious, very cautious, so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. He knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically. But such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. The material contamination is so strong that even a yogi fully engaged in the service of the Lord sometimes becomes ensnared. But Krishna consciousness is so strong that such an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Therefore, the process of devotional service is always a success. No one should deride a devotee for some accidental fall down from the ideal path, for as explained in the next verse, such occasional fall downs will be stopped in due course as soon as a devotee is completely situated in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person who is situated in Krishna consciousness and is engaged with determination in the process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, should be considered to be in the transcendental position, even if by chance or accident he is found to have fallen. The words sadhu eva, he is saintly, are very emphatic. They are a warning to the non-devotees that because of an accidental fall down, a devotee should not be derided. He should still be considered saintly, even if he has accidentally fallen down. And the word mantavya is still more emphatic. If one does not follow this rule and derides a devotee for his accidental fall down, then one is disobeying the order of the Supreme Lord. The only qualification of a devotee is to be unflinchingly and exclusively engaged in devotional service. In the Nishinga Purana, the following statement is given: Bhagavati cha hadao ananya cheta brisho malino pi virajate manushaha nahi shashakalusha chabdikat kadachit timirapada bhavatam upaiti chandraha. The meaning is that if one is fully engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, is sometimes found engaged in abominable activities, these activities should be considered to be like the spots that resemble the marks of a rabbit on the moon. Such spots do not become an impediment to the diffusion of moonlight. Similarly, the accidental fall down of a devotee from the path of saintly character does not make him abominable. On the other hand, one should not misunderstand that a devotee in transcendental devotional service can act in all kinds of abominable ways. This verse refers only to an accident due to the strong power of material connections. Devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But when one is strong enough, he is no longer subjected to such fall downs, as previously explained. No one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that he is still a devotee. If he does not improve in his character by devotional service, then it is to be understood that he is not a high devotee. Carter, you're on.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I had a question about Jada Bharat and at what year of age was he set up for an attempt of sacrifice, and what was the significance of him
Of
living?
what year?
Yes.
What year?
Oh, how old was he?
He must have been in his 20s.
In his 20s. And I was just wondering if there was any significance of that duration of lifetime and how long he had to go on.
No.
Just that was the way it happened.
Just the way it happened.
Right then.
Krishna's way of showing us, how a person can become advanced from another life and become very advanced and yet not appear to be so to ordinary people.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So you got to be careful. Actually, the truth is that we should be giving respect to everyone. We shouldn't disrespect anyone, because a devotee who's actually in Krishna consciousness knows that Krishna is in the heart. Along with the soul, Krishna is there in the heart. And therefore the body is actually a temple of the Lord. So by practicing, seeing through that knowledge, not that we will necessarily see a little super soul everywhere. Look at the heart, and we see, look at little super souls, and then we can, start to get out the archery tray and start, not like that, but through the knowledge, by practice. The beginning of devotional life is that we have a little faith, and then we hear these things, and then we learn what to do and not to do, and then we practice. It's kind of in the beginning of the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says we should theoretically, at least in the beginning, we should theoretically think, now if this were true, what would happen if I really get into it? At least that much faith one has to have. If this were true, let me hear this and follow it, try to follow it, without, hesitation, and see what happens. And if one does that and actually follows, then gradually, by practice, we will be able to respect everyone as spiritual beings. That doesn't mean that we treat everybody the same. Doesn't mean we treat a tiger the same. You hear that there's some news went out today that there's one poacher went out to kill rhinoceroses in South Africa. You heard about this? And he happened to run in. He had to run into an elephant who didn't like it, and the elephant just went. And then a lion came by, a pride of lions came by and just ate him. All that was left was the skull and his pants. That was it. So we don't treat all living entities the same exactly, but we offer respect.
It does remind me of I asked one time when I was in Guyana, people were so hospitable, come into their house and have dinner, and just if they met you just the first time. And one time I asked, why is everybody so hospitable? And he was in the Course, and he said, well, in our religion, we don't know. Maybe it's God coming into our house. So
Well, that's true in one sense, but it's not true in another sense. That's an indiscriminate, what's a neophyte Hindu, or not one that's not really a Hindu, because it may be true, but they're talking about the body. They weren't talking about the soul, because everyone who comes in to the house is. Therefore, in the actual scripture, this is a perversion of the scripture. In India, you see this more than any place. You'll see people doing. That's what this whole thing was about. These dacoits, they read things about sacrifice, and then they just made up their own rules, and they did it, and got the result. You know. But in the actual shastras, it says that if a person is atiti means coming without knowledge. A guest comes into your house that you're not expecting, then you should treat that person as good as God. So that there's unless we have a proper teacher and a proper understanding of the scriptures, then the tendency is to make things up or adjust them and change them according to what we think or what we want. So it's important that we have. I mean, it's like anything. You're going to learn geology from scratch without a teacher. It's ridiculous. It's not possible. Anything. Whether it's, doing any sport or doing, what's it be, a doctor, you're going to be a doctor, they're going to allow you to be a doctor without going through, the procedure and all the things you have to go through, which is quite substantial sacrifice, So we shouldn't think that spiritual life, because it's the object of material life, you don't have to do anything, it's just, spiritual. Twirl a few lotus flowers and a grin on your face and do whatever you like, and it's not like that. Sarva.
Jad Bharat remembered his previous life, and some people seem to have memory of a previous life, but most people don't. So what would be the factor?
I thought of this while we were speaking, while we were reading. I thought of this point. And, sometimes there's some force of anomaly of nature that causes this to happen. It's not necessarily the symptom of a spiritually advanced person. But now they're accumulating an actually group of, of scientists, and parapsychology is now becoming actually, what do they call it? There are courses in universities now on this subject matter of parapsychology. And there are different stories of kids who start to talk about, who they were and the places and far out things. Some of these guys would actually go to the place, and they were supposed to find a building with like this and doorway here and this there, and the child would come and say, no, this is not right. There's supposed to be this and this, and they went to the plans of the building, and they found that it was refurbished, and the things that the child saw were exactly in the place he said in the beginning when the child would have been living there, and many stories like that. So we don't take it that necessarily these are examples of advanced spiritual personalities like Jad Bharat, but they are examples of people who are having experienced that they are eternal, that they are different than the body. There's all kinds of near-death experiences coming out now, where people, sometimes the ascended doesn't work, or their heart stops and they're clinically dead, but they're up and looking down at their body. Then some person comes in, sees what a disaster it is, and faints, and there's some conversation that goes on that's very, very different, unusual. And then when the whole thing's over and the guy comes back to life, he actually says, actually, I was watching this whole thing, and you said this and you said that, and they're like, jigs up, So I don't know what's going to have to happen before certain levels of scientists in certain places don't actually begin to accept the possibility that consciousness is actually separate from the material elements. So far they don't accept, at least in the general scheme. But there are scientists who are beginning to accept it. That book that I turned you on to, I don't know if you got it yet, but there's lots of evidence things coming in to question the paradigms, of material science in different ways. To introduce this concept of consciousness and how it should be accepted as a separate energy. Not that it's a product of material energy. And when you read these books for a long time, seriously, and try to understand them, and try to follow what they say, then these things are revealed to you. Not that we necessarily have to have some revelation of our last life in order to believe it. I've never had that experience directly, but I have full experience without that. Full understanding and acceptance. Without a shadow of a doubt that that's what's going on. I mean, we don't need those kinds of evidence. We've had the evidence right here in our body. Our own body is changing every moment. Cells are dying, new cells are being born at every moment. And after a certain number of years, we have a new body. We've seen pictures of our body when we were, 6 months old. There's nothing to do with that body now. They say, oh, it's just grown. It hasn't just grown. Every cell's different. And there's some scientists say, no, it's not true. There are certain cells in the brain that have the same shape. But then one of our devotee scientists pointed out, Sariputta, that shape is actually like a fountain, and the energy, the material energy is going through it. It's not the same energy. It's interesting. Very interesting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, hey, Chase. Robert. Chase, sorry.
Being in it's fine. Being around non-devotees, he said that he acted blind and deaf. So just being around just regular people that aren't conscious enough, how should we act the same way as just kind of just being closed-minded towards them?
No. This is an example of a person who's fully realized and knows that this is the last birth and that he doesn't want to get entangled again in material existence. So he consciously does that. He was consciously doing that. There's a couple of other stories later on in the Bhagavatam where a person who was acting like that was met by a great soul, a great devotee. Prahlad Maharaj met an avaduta. This is called avaduta. They have no concern with any social laws or rules or anything. They just live the way they want, they act the way they want. And this one happened to be lying down, and he took the position of a python. He just opened his mouth and laid there. And if anything happened to walk in or was put there, then he'd eat. And if not, he wouldn't. And so, but he was covered with, filth, and he didn't take care of himself. And so Prahlad Maharaj, who was actually a liberated soul himself, he looked and he said, wait a second. He started to talk to him. He said, you seem to be very intelligent. I can see from your face and that you're actually intelligent. Why are you doing this? And the Avaduta looked up at him and just started speaking the most transcendental, beautiful thoughts, Yeah, maybe he did. Yes, he did with Rahugana. Yeah, with King Rahugana. That comes later in the next. So, yeah, if the circumstance presents itself, then such a person will actually speak the most profound spiritual wisdom. So we can't imitate that. There are many people in India actually that imitate this, because in India they know these scriptures, and people will just go around naked just because they're lazy and they don't want to do anything. But if you ask them something, they won't be able to tell you anything. Huh? Not recommended. No. Live by the law, not by the exception to the law. Go to school, get the degree, not assume you're going to get an honorary degree someday. Okay, I'm writing my offering. I'm in process of writing my offering to Prabhupada, and for me it's a big deal. Once a year we write an offering to Prabhupada. Some of it's put in a book. So I'm writing and it was supposed to be the 15th of April, and they changed it this year because I don't go on and surf the web and all that stuff. I didn't know, so the deadline was the 31st of March, which is 7 days ago. Yeah. So I got a deadline. I got an extension, but it's tomorrow evening. I just started it today, so I have to go and absorb myself in that. It was very nice to the talk we had. I hope we can talk again. I hope you can come and join us. Actually, I'm hoping that. Whatever. Thank you very much. It's so nice to see you. And hope to see you more. I know you're working hard. That's why you're not around very much. I know that. Hare Krishna.